Well, it looks like we made it on time this time, and we all together to start with, so we don't have to do any waiting around. I actually got my tech stuff together today somewhat. I even got a banner going. So I tried not to talk about what we were going to talk about, but we are talking about patriarchy today, and as usual, I have Essence of Thought with me, and we're going to have a conversation about what is patriarchy. Do you want to answer that question?
Well, I wouldn't necessarily see there's one definition. That's the issue. You know, words are utilized in many different ways. We come across this as secularists all the time with the definitions of theory, etc. For example, the colloquial sense of theory is very different to the scientific sense of theory. And when it hits social sciences, it's absolutely no different, you know. So patriarchy, quite simply, comes from, you know, the expression of male rule, you know, male head of the house, etc., as opposed to matriarchy, which is the opposite. You know, for example, animal species can be matriarchal, elephants are matriarchal, etc. So, you know, that's where it typically comes from. And the word has various differing uses dependent on what sort of feminist you're talking to. There are people who talk in a more general gender equality sense. They typically view there as still being an imbalance towards men, hence they still use patriarchy with the prefix powerful father. Whereas there are others who literally believe that, you know, patriarchy is quite literally male-led. So there is a variation there. When it comes to general feminist theory, I just typically hear patriarchy being used in the way of gender inequality. So that's what I set out hopefully to discuss, because I noticed that, for example, people like Thunderfoot and a lot of my commenters on the video I'd previously done in response to Tag were going about, well, prove patriarchy because feminism is all dependent on the word patriarchy, and that's why it's important. Up to then, I'd never even used the word patriarchy because patriarchy to me was only a word utilized to express something, to explain something. You know, it wasn't a key factor, but they kept on pressing that it has to be that word. So if it has to be that word, then I'm going to express how that word is being utilized by these people. And then they seem to get upset because they go, well, you can't use that word because that word can't be used in that way, and they change the definition to what I've offered, and then they go, thus your arguments fall apart. So it's sort of like there's no way to win. If I avoided using the word patriarchy, like I'd previously done, people would say, you have to prove patriarchy exists. But if I use the word patriarchy in the sense that it is used typically, people then have a fit about the way I'm using it. So it's sort of like picking your poison.
Well, the patriarchy is a problem, you know, from the I think the majority of the reason why people have a problem with the theory of patriarchy, as it's being used by some feminists, and I say some feminists, I recently had an experience where my nieces were saying patriarchy, 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 and I was saying patriarchy is a bad theory. And the reason why men's rights advocates are saying it's a bad theory and just people are against feminism is because it assumes oppression. And that's where I think the real problem stems from. It assumes a kind of oppression, and I can demonstrate that that's not actually going on. Did you want to go into the demonstration of that? Do you understand how I could demonstrate that, or?
Well, you know, I'd ask which way is this oppression taking place. I mean, there's a lot of first-order answering that doesn't really dive into the details. For example, you look at the wage gap, and people say, well, wage gap can be explained by various reasons. Women are less likely to do more overtime. Women are less likely to, you know, argue for their wage, etc. You know, but when you dive further into this issue, and you see, well, women are in a social manner taught to be more submissive, and this is straight from birth. You know, one of the first questions parents are asked by a stranger if they approach them and they have a baby is it a boy or a girl? Psychology has found time and time again, if the parents refuse to answer, their words remain ambiguous. If they're told it's a male, they will, you know, hold the baby's hand and go, oh, you're so strong, you're so strong, you're going to be a brave little boy, aren't you? If it's a girl, they'll talk about how beautiful it is, how emotional it is, how cute it is, etc. These very small cultural little details have an effect later on, and it just permeates throughout everything. As for work hours, dual work households, there are social theorists who are discussing the way that there is a new man emerging. They talked about the new man and the way that men are doing more domestic housework, etc. And that is true. But the rates are not yet equal. So when women in dual working households are still expected to do the majority of domestic chores, they can't do more overtime, which explains that differentiation. Their work is being hampered by this expectation that they should still be doing more housework. Do I believe this is, defeating of the notion of the new man? Absolutely not. I think it's an emerging new man. I think if we keep pushing in that way, things will get better. If you look at Sweden, for example, which has it so any parent can take out, parental leave during the birth of child, they find that the households that have towards more equal parental leave are the ones where the fathers typically do more housework beyond that as well, typically throughout the rest of the year in general. So there are ways to improve things, and I certainly push for that. I do think that is something worth going for. As for gender equality, I'm going to have to disagree with you. There is certainly not gender equality. You are forgetting that gender does not just deal with male and female, or at least cis male and cis female. There is also trans feminism, which deals with a range of genders. And I'd like to remind you the facts that in the UK, 48% of non-cis individuals below the age of 26 have attempted suicide, compared to 6% of cis individuals of the same age. So, there is generally not equality in that area, and that is still part of the gender area. And trans feminism is seeking to address that because, sadly, in meta-LGBT organisations and in meta-feminism, they have been left behind in that respect. That's typically the roof I come under, trans feminists, because that's my area of that. That's where I perceive the biggest issues domestically to be. Internationally, of course, we've got different priorities. For example, internationally, secular feminism is more the vital key, specifically Islamic feminism, because social change, time and time again, is typically going to come from the internal members. That's how progress is sought. So, yeah.
Oh, okay. There's probably gaps in my knowledge in terms of some of the statistics there. Probably staying more with the cis male, cis female model. It's hard for me. I mean, I can theorize about it, but I'm way off in the depths, and I can understand how things could really alter that based on your orientation. So, I mean, that would definitely throw off some calculations there. The idea that I'm going to put forward here is the idea that patriarchy theory isn't. I mean, I can see why you're afraid of it. It has some problems from the get-go. And one of the biggest problems is the stereotypes. And the stereotype that I see is women taking on a protective role, meaning they are the protected, and men taking on the protector role, which more describes the relationship throughout history, and there's a genetic basis for it. So we carry that through, and the only reason that men are in a dominant position economically is because it was a part of the protector role. So if you look at government, why did we need government? Well, that was to negotiate in war. So all these things are a part of the protector role.
I would certainly agree with the historical context. I would challenge the extent of sexual dimorphism in that. Also, in pushing the sexual dimorphism front, you're actually fueling radical feminists because they view that as being the origin for patriarchy, for example. You take a look at, there was, I've got to remember, it was a certain feminist I was reading about, and she discussed the way in which it was the way that women bear children, and during that period they are at a more vulnerable point. That is, in her view, the place that patriarchy inserts itself, and that's where the issues begin. So, you know, you're sort of fueling the wrong people in this as well, but I'd question the extent of this sexual dimorphism, because so far I hear a lot of it being pushed around, but I've not actually seen full-on studies into what extent that is causing everything. And even if there was a genetic basis, so what? So what? That would be like saying there's a genetic basis for this individual being born without legs. So what? Does that mean that we just let them go without legs?
Well, I understand what you're saying, and I'm not making the argument that it's anything. There are causal, and I do have to show the causal chain, but here's one of the reason I say it's more descriptive. In terms of patriarchy, it doesn't do a very good job of describing the scenario, women and children first.
Mm-hmm.
But a protected model does. So it describes that relationship.
Now I understand what you're coming from. So it's the terminology in itself that you view as the issue. You know, you view the historical context of the protected model as being a better explanation at this point.
Yes, that is my argument.
And, you know, I have absolutely no issue with that. I explained, I don't know, it wasn't in the last video, but I believe it was the video before. I have no issue with people utilizing, you know, the different terms or even different titles, so long as I can ask them what they mean by those sort of things. For example, I don't actually even flip out if people use the term MRA. You know, I've got the video on my channel in which I went after the group FM Feminism because they were chanting, what was it, racist, sexist, MRA, go away, and then it was racist, homophobic, MRA, go away, go away. And it was like they had a gay talker come on. The MRA had a gay talker come on. I was like, so this is really just step off, etc. I have no issue so long as people can explain their reasons to me, what their goals are. Their goals are my main priority. If I can agree with a person's goals, I can look beyond whatever term they wish, whether it be MRA, egalitarian, humanist, feminist, whatever. You know. And as for the explanation, you know, maybe yes, I would be open to the defender and defended explanation. That's quite a good one. But, you know, I still do believe there's gender equality. I do believe in challenging that, and I certainly think it is something I'd pursue, especially, and I'm going to have to drag it back there, from the trans feminist perspective, there is a lot there to be fought.
So here's one of the things that I think is when we look at secular feminism, and one of the problems that I think Karen Strong is trying to address, and Paul Elam, did I get that right? Yeah. In terms of the Voice for Men, you know, I've listened to quite a bit of their stuff, and one of the theories I think that's going on here is that that what we are treating women as victims, which falls within the same gender role as we've always done. And it's something that we have to constantly, I think we do need to remind, hey, look, women are not victims, they can be victimizers too.
I will agree with you on a great deal with this. We have the anti-page free individuals. I don't know if you know page free in the US. It's in The Sun, which is part of the Fox News empire. It's a UK newspaper, page free, topless model. Down its own, not the biggest issue, but where it's placed right next to the political section, which is all male dominated, and it sort of presents this sort of dichotomy of men, you go out, you do politics, women get your shirt off, etc. That I could agree with the person that was against page 3, and I was like, okay, if you want to put it to the back and also include a male model and an androgynous model, I'd be absolutely happy for page 3 to have that sort of thing. But then one of the points that they came out with was the way that people who go into the sex work industry, and she was saying, I'm not an anti-sex work, etc. So one thing about them is once they're in there, they find it incredibly hard to get out, etc. The moment that you show your nipples on TV or in a paper, that's it. You can't be hired in lingerie catalogs, you can't be hired for a TV presentation or in any line of field working with children. And I was like, but is that really the fault of, the people that do hire them? And, making them sort of victims in the fact that they can't get out, and then they have to end up going into, the sort of nuts magazines or the zoo magazines, etc. Or is it our societal bias to treat them as broken once they've gone into this field? They, as women, have gone into this field, they've decided to show parts of their body, and then we sort of see them as broken. We see them as dysfunctional women who have been broken down and spat out by the system, but at the same time, we're not going to help them, It's sort of, I do agree there is this idea of, look at them, they must be victims, the victim of working in the sex industry, where it's not really that, it's just there's bias against them because of this perceived victimization in getting later work. But I don't know if that comes across. Or
Well, in a lot of respects, I don't care. What I mean by that is that that may be a problem, but I think the problem goes away if we empower men in the right way. And I think we would agree in terms of empowerment. One of the things is men is always protector, and it's always men's fault. And this is the thing that it gets dangerous when you're dealing with, because this is a classic of, well, it's patriarchy. It's a problem of patriarchy. And yet we come at it as if we're going to just protect women. But it isn't to protect women, it's to empower women to be assertive and to do these things. So you're really running if you overemphasize the fact that rape is, and let me sort of give an example. On campuses, there's this huge push to prevent, the rape culture and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Women are never mentioned as potential perpetrators, which disempowers them, because what you're doing is you're saying only men can perpetrate, only men can be biased, only men can be sexist.
As a member of campus, I have to disagree with that, specifically coming from the LGBT community on campus. We've had issues and we've had to try and fight it, but there is a great disproportion. I don't find groups where campus girls are seeing how many guys they can sleep with during freshers, pitting it as a competition where people are being used as objects as opposed to actual people with feelings and fully fledged personalities. There is that disproportion there, and I do agree. Men can be sexually assaulted, men can be raped, etc. And I'm not going to deny that. That's not part of what I do. So maybe, if they are being forgotten, I do believe there should certainly be critiques of the movement. There should always be critics of the movement. Any movement out there should always have its critics. So there should be critics, and they should mention that if men are being proportionally forgotten, they should be recognized more. Standpoint Feminism and Bell Hook to discuss this in the way that you can't always expect other people of other qualities to always remember and fight for you. So that's why, again, I have no issue with people who do go out and they do decide to concentrate on, say, for example, court cases between divorced parents, supporting raped male individuals, or male individuals who have been victims of domestic abuse, etc. I have absolutely no issues with that. I support that. The problem is that
I'm going to have to take a break here. So this is the time I need to take a break. I'm going to mute myself and kill my camera.
Okay. I wonder if we've got any comments in the section.
She's outside.
No, let her come in. Yeah. Then you don't, and then just let her out of the, I don't want her out there.
Okay. We have a dog here. No. Okay, never mind. Sadie's fine with the dog. Anyways, so where were we?
Oh yes, I
Cancer.
was going to add, but the fact is, the people who spent so much time complaining about, how men are forgotten in these factors, rather than actually work to fight these things, all they do is they spend their time attacking the work of other feminists, regardless of what type they are. That's the issue I'd have here. The fact that, okay, you can critique the general movement, but you spend so long fighting, that so much resources are being poured in from both sides into attacking another issue, when rather, if they could both see that they both had the same goals in the end, cooperation would certainly be preferable. And that's why I go out my way to say, if you use a different word, if you use humanist, egalitarian, feminist, samurai, as long as you agree with your goals, I don't care. That's the thing.
Well, no, I agree with you to a certain extent there, but part of it is the whole conversation, the automatic reaction of, we need to talk about the way we present the information, and that's a part of the problem. Well, we have men need to get more involved, because gender issues are not just women's issues. They're depending on, it doesn't matter what orientation you are, you need to take responsibility for the roles that we play, and part of it is the protector role. We don't really talk about telling men not to play that role. We get in and this is where the white knighting comes into play. Men go into the white knight and they get protective, and that's not actually the appropriate role to play. It's almost like you started the fight, you finish the fight, right? It's if a man starts a fight, traditionally, the protector role, they're responsible for the fight they create. You either don't hit them in the first fight, don't start the fight unless you plan to finish it, but don't have someone else finish your fight for you. It's like your fight.
I think that links back to the psychology I mentioned earlier, where, little children, the way that boys are taught, you're so strong, and, compared to, I do understand that. I mean, as for my predicted household with the partners that I'm currently with, it looks at the moment like I will be a stay-at-home father, or father/mother, if I ever am into that role, because of course I'm gender alternating, I'm gender fluid, because my current girlfriend, she is very academic, she's very strong-willed, and she's going hopefully into international relations and economics, so compared to me and my media production and all that, it's so
you make a good stay-at-home guy.
I think I would, because that way, I want to, I still want to help out. I'm actually thinking of becoming a humanist chaplain to work with the local community on various issues, but also, whilst I stay at home, I can also do my video production. I can still do all of that around my schedule whenever it sort of suits me, sort of thing. So I'm also the one that cooks. My girlfriend not cook.
I'm actually the cook too.
Oh, okay.
But I haven't been doing as much cooking lately. I've been on this crazy diet, and so that's I will start doing more cooking as I more streamline my diet here.
Mm-hmm. So but I do agree. One thing, I have a hypothesis, and this is purely my hypothesis, wild conjecture, etc. This comes from me being a trans feminist, particularly of a non-binary. I think there will be an androgyny point. It's sort of like a point that socially, as we become more conscious of ourselves and become more aware, and we start, dissolving certain social expectations. At the moment, gender has very significant symbolic value. It's one of the things that people define themselves by. That's why we can actually observe this symbolic value. It sounds very wafting, but we can actually observe it in trans individuals who have severe gender dysphoria. it has such significant value in a symbolic manner that if you attempt to fight it and deny it to them, you can drive them to suicide. So, but I believe as we start dissolving these social expectations, as cis men are told that they can be more expressive and emotional, and cis women are told that they can be strong, etc. as well. I believe that this value will slowly start to decrease to the point where I believe gender may one day just become another sort of personality type, like A-type personality, B-type personality. That is just wild conjecture on my part, and I'd like that world, but it's something I can work for.
Well, actually, I would, when I project into the future and I see, transhumanism and stuff like that, I mean, that's exactly where it's going to go. I mean, you can change your gender role on the fly when you're a virtual person, or you're a non-substantive person.
And you're no longer restricted. If there is, to what degree sexual dimorphism does affect other species, because we are sexual dimorphic species, it's the extent of which I do not, grasp, because it's very often very promiscuous species are the most sexually dimorphic species, whereas we've been in a culture of serial monogamy for so long that seems to have decreased considerably. But if there is still any remaining aspects, if we do reach the transhumanist point, the moment you remove the physical body, you just have the conscience, and then that's it. So, okay.
So, I think your theory has some projections into the future. It will be interesting to see, and I think this is sort of interesting how we are breaking down gender roles. But so I think you get in trouble in terms of why people get on you with this in terms of protecting the feminism, is because it is seen as an oppressor relationship more so than as a you're not looking at the actual stereotypes, like I'm giving you the stereotype of the protected versus the protector. There isn't, in that sense, we don't have one's oppressing the other. They're just a relationship between one needs our protection, so we're giving our protection, whereas one, and by default, the person says, well, I feel oppressed. Well, sometimes when you're being, protected, you will feel kind of like, well, I can't do this, I can't do that, because these guys are constantly telling me, no, you stay here, it's safer for you to be there. So, and I think that's a confusion, that feminists often project this victimhood onto, and not allowing men to be victims. It's like, well, you can't be a victim because you're the oppressor, so how can you be a victim? Because of the stereotype.
Especially, and I'm going to have to say this, cis white middle-class feminists in particular are sometimes often the most unpleasant individuals I have to meet, especially as a non-cis individual, but also know there's issues with working class individuals that they have with them, and of course ethnic minorities. I mean, Bell Hook, she was a black feminist, black lower class feminist who went to Stanford, and she felt absolutely out of place there, and general feminist theory did not link with her because it lacked intersectionality. It lacked account for also the racism she faced and the economic strain she faced each day. So I can certainly agree with you that there needs to be higher levels of critique, not lower levels of critique, higher levels. But how the critique is put forward is also vital. If you have people that just instantly, the moment you use the F word, they attack you, and first of all they say, well, you're not really a feminist, and then they go, I've never seen a positive feminist. You're excluding someone who is a positive feminist, and then going, well, I don't see any positive feminists. It's the sort of, it's a feedback loop. If I exclude all of the feminists, all people who call themselves feminists, yet are positive, because positive can't be feminist, I therefore can't see any positive feminists. It's sort of confirmation bias going on there.
Yeah, labels are always a problem. And I know some people, like Steve Pinker was very interesting. He had a debate against the effects of the stereotypes, and really taking a male perspective, anybody called himself a feminist, and I was like, well, are you doing that because you really feel like you're a feminist, or are you doing that because you don't want to be attacked for not being a feminist? So sometimes I wonder how someone is using a label. You know, are they really behind it, or are they just behind the results? They want women to have the vote. They want, you know, they believe in pro-choice. You know, those sorts of reasons why they use the label.
I mean, one thing that I've noticed is even though I never exclude radical feminists in any of my videos, I never say they are not real feminists. I simply distance myself and say this is not the type of feminism I agree with. You know, I still get people commenting, why are you no true Scotsmanning radical feminists and saying that they're not real feminists? No, it's not. That's not what's going on. I'm just stating that I feel comfortable enough in that my reasons and my theories are separate enough from these people that I feel absolutely no need to actually go, these aren't real feminists sort of thing. It's the same as secular Stalinists versus secular humanists. You know, the two, they share one factor, which is secularism, but beyond that, they are so vastly different and polarized that I feel no excuse to go every time, secular Stalinists are not really secular. You know, I don't feel the need to do that. So on the same basis, I don't feel the need to exclude radical feminism. I am actually working on a sort of, and I'm trying to make it an ultimate video, because I was originally doing feminism in small little tidbits, which this video showed me was not the way to go about things. You know, you forget one little aspect, like the fact that you don't mind whatever title people use, and they instantly set on you. So I'm trying to currently work on a video. I'm actually going through the different types of feminism, including radical feminism, and that's hence I know Firestone, which is the woman that I mentioned earlier. She's the one that said that, you know, men come along at the point of pregnancy, and that's when they first of all usurp their control, and then it just creates a cycle of control. She was behind artificial birthings, i.e. machines which practically don't clone, but, you know, they hold the children, etc., because she believed that that would be the first way of, first of all, getting free from patriarchal oppression, and then being free from men altogether. She actually generally wanted to get rid of them. So, you know, I do go through the radical side first. I also go through the trans, trans exclusionary radical side, and then I come back around and I'm going to start discussing the other types of forms of feminism. I'm also going to discuss you know, extra qualifiers, because there are things that it's not a dichotomy between two groups. It's any of the groups can sort of have these extra qualifiers. For example, radical and liberal in sociology does not dictate the sort of ideas on the solutions. It's not how extreme the solutions are. Liberal typically deals with whether the issue is, you know, individualistic and dealable, versus radical, which views it as being more deterministic, more, you know, I'm trying to think of the word. What's the opposite of utopian? Dystopian. They view it as more dystopian, and their solutions are, you know, along that route. Whereas there's also extremism. For example, you can have a non-extreme radical feminist, i.e. a person who just sits on an armchair all day bitching about men, etc. They're still a radical feminist. They still have those views. They're just not doing anything about it, compared to a liberal feminist who chains themselves to the gates of Parliament in, you know, extreme protests. That's sort of one qualifier. Another one is hyper, and all groups, I just can't deal with hypersensitivity. It does just grind on me. I remember, it isn't just this quality either. I remember I had recently on my 18 fucked up arguments against homosexuality, I had a person who attacked me for apparently dumping poly relationships in with bestiality and, you know, all this sort of thing. And it's like, no, I deliberately left them out of any of my discussion. And I explained to them the reason for this is I am poly myself. I have two partners, I'm dating them currently, and they both know each other, and they're both good friends. So, you know, hypersensitivity just anywhere sort of grinds my axe. You know, it's like, I can understand when state has, you know, religious artifacts or monuments on their grounds, tackle it. You know, that's actually an expression. If someone says Merry Christmas to me, I'm not going to explode in their face and bite their head off. That's not what I want to do. That's being hypersensitive. So any feminist group can be hypersensitive. Well, there's hypersensitive liberals. They're the same sort of hypersensitivity that you get for the Islamic apologists. I mean, liberal Islamic apologists. The people that say you can't criticize Islam at all. The ones that went after Bill Maher, etc. But then also you can get the hyper radicals, and yeah. So I'm also going to go over some of these sort of qualifiers.
I think a lot of these things are personality based, though. I mean, it's kind of like it doesn't matter what they believe, whatever they believe, they're going to be hyper about it. Yeah. So it's kind of the same thing rehashed in many different ways. It's just a different example of how we don't listen. It comes down to a lot of not listening to what the other person is saying and not willing to take criticism, because that is sort of a key point. And on that key point, I did want to address a couple things, and one reason why I, become very sensitive to the issue of men's issues is the fact that we aren't addressing the issues that affect men, and we address women's issues. We put a lot of money into it, but we're not really putting any money into it. Like when you say
dark statistic of male abuse, for example, that's a statistic that doesn't get reported, etc. It's far higher than women's.
Well, when you just look at violence in society, I mean, men are more likely to be victims of violence than women. Their suicide rate, at least in the United States, is 4 times that of women. So when you look at these other quality of life issues for men, they're not really being addressed. We're addressing women's issues exclusively. In the West, this is very extensively women-focused, and I think a part of the problem is, like I was saying originally, is the oppression versus the protector role. Men aren't oppressing; they're in this protector role, and they don't understand they're being still asked to protect, and when they protect, they're considered oppressed depending on the context, right? So the context turns their protective role into an oppressive role. But not realizing that they haven't changed roles; they're just your perception of what a man is doing has shifted. Well, I don't like it, therefore it's an oppressive role. Instead of educating women as well as men, you don't need to protect women all the time. They need to protect their own stuff.
I do believe there's some things being done. I don't know if it's specifically coming from the feminist community or off on the side, but in the way that, for example, in tackling suicide, the way men are taught that they can be more expressive, this healthy outlet of emotional expression can be a way in reducing suicide rates, for example. So I do believe there are some things. Whether the concentration is high or not, that I'm up for discussion for. I'm not one of those people that gets absolutely insulted if someone suggests that. There is a time and a place, for example, though. If it's a specific story about a specific individual, a woman who was assaulted, raped, etc., that's not the place to go on about, the larger picture of how men are also hard done by. If the discussion is on how women are hard done by in general, and in very macro sort of view, then go for it. That's a brilliant time to sort of bring it up and sort of compare it. So.
And the other issue, and this is one that's sort of troubling to me, is male-safe places for men to have men's issues where they discuss issues affecting men. I mean, it's very interesting with some of these male conferences how they're just totally. Why can't they have their own group? Why do women have to be at the group, or why does the subject have to be just about women? Why can't they have their safe? Why does feminism has to be included?
Yeah, that does irk me. I mean, there are issues that face men. I mean, thankfully, our LGBT society, the first year I was there, when we had the women's position, there was also a male welfare position. So there was always that sort of equality there. We've now actually got rid of the different positions. We simply combined a sex and gender position now. And now there's also a sexuality and romance position because we found it was the most effective way to deal with things. So, but there's no standalone women's position. There's no standalone men's position anymore. So because that didn't seem to be wanted at the time.
Well, you know, I mean, I think it just depends upon the group, and people need different sorts of groups, you know, at particular times in their lives. So, you know, I just find it's kind of interesting, you know, that, and some of it is trumped up. I mean, I you know, Paul Elam, you know, sometimes say, yeah, you're kind of pushing the issue sometimes way too far. You know, you're getting too hyper about it. So
I feel extremely bad about the comments. It's once you get like you get a certain type of comment about 5 times, and if you go through the comment section, you just see me break, and all decency goes out the window. I really, you know, I'm one of those people that, yes, I get irritated and I start snapping at everyone. Then I go to bed and it's just like, what have I done? And I really am quite poor at that. And yeah, it's one of my character faults.
Part of that is age. Some of it will. You'll get worse at some things, you get better at others. One is giving yourself a break, you know, and realizing, hey, this is not a good time to be doing this, you know.
Yeah.
You know, the emotion gets the better of us, and we're like, yeah, maybe not. I mean, I've written some comments that were like, yeah, not gonna go there, and I don't post them. I just leave them percolate for a while, and then I find a really cool way of saying what I want to say, but not being quite so condescending and attacking. But you know, but we gotta have fun too, and if people can't take, you know, hey, you're gonna try something that might not work. You know, deal with it. You know, this is a good time to experiment. It's free. It doesn't really cost us. You know, or shouldn't cost us that much in terms of our reputation. But
I mean, it's not like I have stopped my other works. I know I've been not doing very much over the exam period, but I mean, I've got a video currently in the you know, Sony Vegas. That's the next creationist accountability. So that creationist video I did a few weeks back, you know, it's the next one of that. So, I'm still doing my normal content. It's just, yeah, so much stuff going on.
Well, I mean, I think in some ways you do need to kind of have a something to bounce off of. Meaning, if you have just one issue, you become too focused, and you kind of need to pull yourself away from it, do something else. Then you can come back, and you'll have a fresh perspective. I mean, it takes. Yeah, being too concentrated on one sort of subject area for too long is a problem. So that I actually think it's very healthy for you to do a video here on sort of little off topic, see what kind of, you know, traction you get, or how, you know, how people react. You know, you get a lot of downvotes once in a while. That's good for you.
That was another thing. I got a few comments of people that saying I was just trying to pander to the crowd and I was just trying to get popularity. It's like my average video is 98% approval rate. My videos on feminism drop to between 50 to 70% approval rating. So it's not me trying to get, you know, people happy. It's because I generally think I need to discuss these issues now and then. So, yeah.
No, I think it's good. I think if all your videos are, you know, 97%, then you're not reaching deeper into the blogosphere, as it were, to see what else is out there and to get other people thinking about it. Yeah, you know, having you know, it just means that you're in you know, you're not reaching far enough, because there are plenty of people out there that disagree with you, but they're not listening to you. So.
Yeah, the idea is keep working for that 3%, also keep improving the arguments. Because even if you repeat the same argument, you do it more streamlined, you compact it, and you compose yourself better. So there's always improvement to be had. I mean, I feel really happy when I've added something onto an argument I've already done before, and people say, that's just a really original point. Yeah, I never really thought of that before. Yeah, I really get happy when that happens, because that means I've actually added something of my own to pre-existing arguments. So.
Well, there's always new things to take into consideration. You know, I was hoping we'd have more of an argument about patriarchy, but it's really difficult to argue when you just don't have, you know, when you're too agreeable.
I've got a charm offensive going on.
Yeah, no, it's kind of hard, but, I think the one point that I wanted to sort of touch upon was the idea of what do you do um, if you're saying they don't do enough to help men, and that's a reasonable thing, but I think getting them, I think a part of it is psychology, is not always to create a voice to recognize your opinions do matter, and it's not women are not always right. I mean, if you look through all of the sexism in terms of the subconscious sort of a joke sort of just illustrates the subconscious stereotype, and the woman's always right is the one that kind of like, well, real is that true? It can't be. It just doesn't make sense for that to be true. But to extend that stereotype is very dangerous, and men need to actually push against some of these stereotypes. It's not something really to chuckle about all the time. I mean, use it effectively, that knowledge, but realize that there's some real downsides if we don't question what people are telling us, even if they happen to be the significant other in the relationship.
I totally agree. I mean, no movement is perfect. Critics are always needed, and that's one thing I do. I absolutely do detest is this idea that if you critique a certain thing, then you instantly get shut down. Sort of, we don't talk about this, we don't mention that, as George Carlin was famous for going on about. But yeah, I do agree. There should definitely be no taboo areas. There should definitely be no-go zones even.
Well, there's a time and a place, and I mean, I'll grant you that, and so you have to choose your time and your place, and so that's why we do some things on YouTube we wouldn't do in person, and I find it's character building though too, in terms of atheism. I never took it seriously, and then I started thinking about it. Well, okay, they had impacts here, impacts there, and yeah, they say this. So I work with a Catholic, right, and come from a Catholic. My wife's Catholic still. I've devalued the faith, or is it like this? I don't know, but no, it should be like this, right? The point being is that we need to still respect the people in our lives, regardless of what they believe, and you need to be civil for the sanctity of your environment. The issues aren't that important on a day-to-day basis, and little stating positions important, but not necessarily, like you said, if someone says Merry Christmas or uses a religious context.
Choose your battles.
Yes. Choose your battles, but also be aware of how you feel about them. Like for me this year, I really decided I really hate Christmas. So. I mean, and there's a lot of atheists that love Christmas. They love the music, they love it, and there's things about Christmas I think, but I just think it's, the whole commercialism is just like, this is sick. This is a sickness. Why do I put up with this every year?
My perfect Christmas is literally just the meeting, the meal, the singing. That's about it. The presents are actually a dampener for me. That's the one part that it gets to. It's like, this again, really. But yeah, I mean, the only thing I could really add to what the original discussion was is when it comes to domestic issues, we also forget now that we live in an international cosmopolitan society. So when people talk about internationally, there certainly are reasons for feminism. They also forget that sometimes those issues do come over here. For example, female genital mutilation as a cultural practice. That still happens domestically in the UK. However, currently in Europe, the only place that's actually taken legal action against cases of FGM is France, I believe, even though there are a number of cases around. So,
but what of circumcision?
I do agree with the idea that male genital mutilation should be challenged as well. It's the only benefit that is actually identifiable is the decrease in STI infection rate. The basic infection rate is absolutely bogus because the glands is actually fused to the foreskin. it's an evolutionary feature to prevent infection. That's why you should never pull back the foreskin of a baby. It should always be the one that does it itself naturally, because it's actually evolved that way to help prevent infection. But yeah, it's the only thing that is STI rights. I don't know whether that's because people who are circumcised possibly have less feeling. Could it be a general trend that then they go on to have less sex, or if there's actually a reason for it, a scientific basis for it? But either way, I don't know how many infants typically have sexual intercourse.
Right.
So it should be left up to an age.
I hope it's not very many.
Yes,
I hope it's not.
I certainly think it should be left to the individual to reach an age, for example, the same age when they can get a tattoo. If they want to take that step, then okay, they can do that. I mean, the religious reason for against it, I'd like to remind you, Abraham was 80, wasn't he, when he was circumcised? He was quite, he was in his grey years. He was very old. It was like, surely wait for them to have the covenant with God or whatever. It surely has more meaning that way.
That's not a good age.
So yeah.
Well, okay. So we didn't have a good fight. I was kind of hoping for a fight here, but it's really hard.
I'm British. Hard. It's just because I'm British.
It's a British problem.
The moment you
Brits.
It's like you always hit like comedy series, etc., where like a person's going to go and fight someone, and it's like they're being egged on by their friends. They then disappear to talk to the person that they're going to go fight, and then they come back and they say, "So what happened?" "I just got invited round for dinner."
Well, I had one fight in high school. I remember this guy. He was just itching for a fight, so I finally gave him a fight. And it's like the only fight I had, but it was a necessary fight. And I say that now in retrospect because it makes sense, because it's like you said, now he invited me around for dinner. There was this respect that he had for me, and we sort of respected each other after the fight. More so than we did before. So there was that, it was gone, So, I mean, fights can be really strange in that respect, but, yeah. But
the worst you have to, worst that happens if you lose the discussion is that you learn something new.
Well, actually, you're the winner in that. There was I think I had a YouTube video about that.
You did do it. Yeah, I remember. You sent me the video. I think that was the one that I couldn't make because of the student protests.
Oh, yeah, maybe that was the one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but anyways, yeah, I do agree, and I think we have to allow for losing our arguments is an important concept. And this is where our discussion with feminism needs to be more, I take the anti-feminist position. I mean, I was a feminist for most of my life, but, I said, nah, I'm an anti-feminist now, forget it, and I take it not from the standpoint of I don't believe in equal rights, but I think that...
you believe the term has overstayed its welcome.
Well, patriarchy specifically is wrong. I mean, the theory of patriarchy as an oppression is fundamentally wrong. Like I said, I mean, I have a better explanation, and that explanation carries predictive powers as well as descriptive powers of the past. It doesn't make sense. I mean, I didn't get invited to a smoke-filled room where you say, you are going to control these women. I mean, did you get invited? Because I wasn't.
Well, I don't know if they would have thought, it would have been an issue with me being gender alternating, but no, I didn't get an invite. Didn't even get half an invite.
So I mean, it's what I'm saying is it's not a cult. It's a ramification of that protected model. Yeah, I agree, and all the things you stated, like when you say a female child, you immediately assume, oh, this person will never learn how to protect themselves. They always have to be protected. They're going to have their beauty. They're going to have their value is in the.
You're going to be first of all, you're going to be a daughter, possibly a sister. Then you're going to be a husband. You sort of always got a protector there. First order protection is your father when you're growing up, then your brother when you're a little bit larger, and then later on when you find someone, it's going to be your husband. That's your protector.
Right. Well, and this is like I bring up the fact we have chess tournaments for women, only chess tournaments. I'm like, what kind of message are you sending there?
I have no idea for that. I just don't see it.
But the message you're sending to women is that they can't compete with men. I mean, it's just the wrong. Okay, here we have. Why aren't feminism bent out of shape about that? You know, it's just, to me, it's like, I would be furious. I mean, you're not good enough. Well, and to be honest with you, not enough women play chess. I mean, I wish more women would actually play chess, because I think it's a really important skill set. You know, dads need to be teaching their daughters to play chess. I mean, it's part of growing up. I think everyone should learn how to play chess. I mean, it's a fundamental strategy understanding. It just really helps you understand strategy. And it's good to know. Everyone should know it. So.
Well, I will probably avoid using the P word from now on, because whilst I'm not about to give up on the word feminism because of the historical context, you know, I think the P word, if people do feel that strong, I'll just stick with the term gender inequality. I'm just going to stick with that. It's far less likely to provoke anger. So
I win. So
you win.
So
yes,
I defeated hatred. Yay!
You defeated the usage of a word. I mean, one thing that does bug me is that people have been getting out the basic dictionaries and going, look, this is how the word is typically used. And it's like, yeah, so in social science, I'm sorry to say, but we social scientists, we have this thing that we like doing. We like taking on words that have some relevance and absolutely bastardizing them. I mean, another one is hegemony versus cultural hegemony.
What the hell is hegemony?
Hegemony is the control over, you know, states by one specific individual. So, you know, it's often by economic, political, or military power you sort of control, you know, like a city-state, etc., or something like that, indirectly. But Gramsci, he was a neo-Marxist, he discussed his idea of hegemony, or hegemony, or hegemony. It's just whichever way it's pronounced. And, you know, to him, he definitely changed it to cultural hegemony, which is the rule via consent, i.e. people are fed commonsensical ideas, you know, on the very first basis that look very, they look basic and they look decent and look good, etc. So you follow them, and then he was arguing that it takes an organic intellectual to come along, sort of perceive through those, you know, ad hoc responses and to see the deeper implications. For example, you know, you could even say the Kalam cosmological argument was a form of religious hegemony, because it's very commonsensical, where if this came into existence as from cause and effect, you needed a cause, so therefore there must be a God. You know, at basic level, it seems rather commonsensical. When you start looking at cause and effect and actually how it operates, and you look at the quantum realm, common sense goes out the window. So.
Well, it's sometimes referred to as the outsider's advantage, you know, and I heard you saying that, I was thinking, oh, okay, because that is something that, you know, one of my Bill Maher one with protecting Sam Harris there was pointing out that the outsider's advantage is something that we, you know, to say, oh, well, you can't argue that because you don't have enough experience is really a stupid argument. That's really weird. I couldn't believe how many people actually commented that you need experience, you know, Aslan has all this experience. I'm like, and what's his argument? His argument sucks. So, you know, get a better argument.
But then even when you do get someone from internally, like I remember following Shirtgate, I've forgotten her name. She is she's a non-white feminist. She was banned from giving lectures at certain universities, and she had her actual honorary degree redacted because there was
redacted.
Retracted even, not redacted.
Oh, okay.
Because you know, she was anti-Islam, even though she was, you know, she came from Islamic background herself. She'd got away from it, and she was giving her experience. But then when it came to Shirtgate, she did have a go at the you know, the stupid hypersensitivity going on there, and instantly on Free Thought blogs there was this absolutely appalling post by a white cis feminist going on how you can just see the way that she's been fed the little letters by Dawkins, you know, by Richard Dawkins on.
Yeah, I'm sure Richard Dawkins is feeding all this stuff to people. I mean, I don't think he has the patience nor the time to do that.
No, but yeah.
Yeah, these conspiracy theories are always interesting. You know, I have to sort of say, well, how many steps would that actually take?
Yes.
Now, who's the guy that's supposed to be behind Anita Sarkeesian? Bill McIntosh? John McIntosh, is that right?
No idea. I have absolutely no clue.
Well, Thunderfoot's now on the same bandwagon. Bandwagon. I probably think there's probably something to it, but you know, in terms of these scenarios do exist. You know, there are people that really do these things, and there are, you know, but does everyone do it? No. I mean, most people are pretty. Yeah. So, anyways. I win. That's all that matters. So you can go away now. I'm done with you.
I got no issue with people using it, but I think just for personal usage, I'm just going to go back to using gender inequality. It's so much simpler.
Yeah. Well, and it's bidirectional, right? You know,
yeah. It's not just bidirectional. It's also it covers the entire spectrum as well, as mentioned with trans feminism, for example.
Sure. Yeah, those. You guys like to just complicate things. That's.
It's like going from 2D to 3D.
You know, it adds so many dimensions. In fact, one of my stories I'm working on in terms of a transhumanist perspective is just how the levels of complexity that you can add into relationships just by the fact that you don't have, you know, a physical restraints that we commonly associate with reality. You know, it's just a lot to think about in that dimension. So yeah, that's the right way to think about it, but it's also very hard to think about it that way. So,
yeah,
you know.
Okay. Well, I hope you've enjoyed. I'm sorry if you didn't get the fight you were looking for.
Damn those Brits! All right, no. I figured you would find a way not to fight. So push comes to shove, you know.
I've done enough fighting already.
No, you're right. You know, and I mean, I think I really wanted to show the balance between that you're not irrational. You know.
I just hate this constant polarization that goes on. It's the us versus them mentality of everything.
Yeah, that is actually a very dangerous thing, and I think you and I both strongly agree on that. Is that we really can't, and it does, and that's why I get mad at the whole patriarchy. When someone throws patriarchy in your face, it's like that's not an explanation. It doesn't explain relationships. It doesn't explain what you're supposed to do. And they say that men can't discriminate, or women can't discriminate against men because of patriarchy is fundamentally fucked up, you know, and that's the way I see it, you know. And I got in a big fight over Christmas about that. I was really pissed off. I was like, what do you mean women can't discriminate against men? What the hell are you talking about? So that was my impetus towards going towards this one, because I wanted to see what you thought about it. It makes me crazy when someone makes bold statements like that. Anyways, I'll let you go. Anyways, you have a great rest of your day. And thanks for watching, the one person that might have watched. All right, bye.